Assalamualaikum warahmatullahi wabarakatuh. Hello, my name is Lalu Zaza from class 5 TP1. In this video, I will present my English syntax project for the midterm examination. This presentation is divided into four main parts. First, I will explain the key concept of syntax. Second, I will discuss the lexical and grammatical category analysis of a selected sentence. Third, I will describe the constituency test that I use in this project. And finally, I will share what I learned and the challenges I faced during the process. Let's begin with the first part, the main concept of syntax. Syntax is a branch of linguistics that studies how words are arranged and combined to form phrases and sentences. It focuses on the patterns and rules that determine how words can be grouped to express clear and meaningful ideas. In other words, syntax helps us understand how sentences are built, why certain word orders make sense, and how structure affects meaning. It also explains why native speakers naturally know which sentences are grammatical and which are not, even without learning the rules explicitly. One important property of syntax is hierarchical organization, which means that the sentences are built in layers or levels. A sentence is not just a straight line of words, but a structure where smaller units combine to form larger ones. For example, in the sentence, "The small child in the park is laughing," the phrase "the small child in the park" acts as a single unit. It is the subject of the sentence. Inside the subject, we can find smaller structures, such as the small child, which is a noun phrase, and in the park, a prepositional phrase. This shows that syntax organizes language systematically, where every phrase has its own internal structure and function. Another key property is recursion. Recursion allows us to place one structure inside another of the same type, creating more complex sentences. For example, we can say "the man smiled," but then we can add a clause to say "the man who arrived yesterday smiled." And we can even expand it further: "the man who said that he arrived yesterday smiled." Each time, the sentence remains grammatical, showing that syntax allows infinite creativity. Recursion is what makes human language so unique. It lets us express ideas using limited vocabulary and a finite set of rules. The third important property is structure dependence. This means grammatical rules depend on how words are grouped in a sentence, not just on their order. For example, in "Is the boy who is singing my brother?" the correct movement of the verb depends on the structure, not on a position. We don't say "Is the boy who is singing is my brother?" because the verb inside the relative clause cannot move. This shows that speakers unconsciously rely on structural relationship when forming sentences. This proves that syntax is not linear but structural. Understanding these properties, which are hierarchy, recursion, and structure dependence, gives us insight into how language is organized and how meaning is built through structures. Now that we have discussed the main ideas of syntax, let's move on to the next part, which focuses on the lexical and grammatical category analysis. In this section, I analyze the sentence. All we have to decide is what to do with the time that is given us. A quote from The Lord of the Rings by J.R.R. Tolkien. This sentence is interesting because it contains multiple clauses and clear example of grammatical relationships within a single structure. Lexically, each word belongs to a specific category based on its function. For instance, all is a determiner that shows quantity, we is a pronoun functioning as the subject, have is the main verb that expresses obligation, to decide is an infinitive verb acting as the complement of have, the verb is functions as the linking verb, connecting the subject and its complement. Inside the complement clause, what to do with the time that is given us, we can find several smaller units. What introduce a noun clause, to do is an infinitive verb, while with the time is a prepositional phrase. Finally, that is given us is a relative clause modifying time. These layers show how much each phrase contributes to the overall meaning. Grammatically, we is a first person plural pronoun in the nominative case. Have and is are verbs in the present tense, and us is a first person plural pronoun in the subjunctive case. The determinal "the" marks definiteness, indicating that time is specific and already known. This analysis shows how syntax connects words, phrases, and clauses through grammatical relationships like tense, number, and case. After analyzing the categories, I continued by testing whether these phrases truly act as constituents in a sentence. To check that, I used three tests: the movement test, the question test, and the clef test. These tests help prove whether a group of words function as a single syntactic unit. For example, in the sentence, "It doesn't matter who you are or what you look like," we can move the clause to the front. Who you are or what you look like doesn't matter. The sentence is still grammatical, meaning that the clause functions as a constituent. In the question test, we can ask "what doesn't matter" and answer "who you are or what you look like." Since the entire phrase can act as one answer, it is a valid constituent. The clef test also confirms this. We can say "it is who you are that doesn't matter." The sentence remains grammatical, showing that the highlighted phrase functions as a single unit within the structure. Similarly, in another sentence, "when you want something, all the universe conspires in helping you to achieve it." We can apply this test to show that "when you want something" and "in helping you to achieve it" also act as constituents. The three tests prove that the sentences are built hierarchically. Words form phrases, phrases form clauses, and clauses form sentences. They show that syntax organizes language in a systematic way. Now that we have explored how syntax works through these tests, let's move to the final part: what I learned from this project. Through this project, I learned that syntax is not only about memorizing rules or identifying word classes, but about understanding how structure creates meaning. Analyzing lexical and grammatical categories helped me see how every single word contributes to the overall message of a sentence. Constructing syntax trees and applying constituency tests also trained me to think more carefully and logically when analyzing language. The most challenging part was dealing with long and complex sentences, especially that with multiple embedded clauses. At first, it was difficult to decide which parts should connect directly and how to represent them in the syntax tree. However, after practice, I found that breaking the sentence step by step made it easier to understand the relationship between phrases and clauses. This project also taught me that syntax is deeply connected to meaning and creativity. When we understand sentence structure, we can express ideas more clearly and even emphasize meaning through construction. Overall, this project helped me appreciate the organization and creativity of language and how syntax gives structure to human thought. Okay, that's all. That's all from me. Thank you for watching and listening to my presentation. Wassalamualaikum warahmatullahi wabarakatuh.